finds him.
Without Project Clean Slate, there is no telling where I would be right now.
It gave him back his life, because once he got the felony, it seemed like life was over.
Being unemployed, being depressed, being a burden. Project Clean Slate helped wipe those things away. I can't say thank you enough. I am now able to work for a reputable airline. Detroit had my back, all because I live in Detroit.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in a home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Week That Was. My name is Saeed Khan, broadcasting from Detroit, which, by the way, according to the census, had an increase in population of 1,800 people, which I think were people who came in for the NFL draft and were told that their checkout time is noon of 2035. So that might be why they're still around. But, you know, still a positive development for us all. Well, Joining us here, of course, we have our usual esteemed troika of lawyers of Steve Fishman, Sklar, Bill Seikaly, and we are also joined with a special guest, former Fox 2 News reporter Huel Perkins, who's going to let it rip here. Anchor, who's going to let it rip here. Labor and community activist Barb Ingalls, veteran journalist Nancy Derringer, and of course, co-founder of Deadline Detroit, Allan Lengel. So we have the trial that seems to still not end in New York City, and former first fixer to former President Donald Trump, Michael Cohen, was testifying this week in the hush money trial, with apparently a few fireworks going back and forth between him and Todd Blanche, Trump's lead attorney. Any analysis of what's been going on in this trial? Yeah, Steve.
Well, we say the same thing every time. We're not there, and you really have to be there to see what the effect is. I think when you're cross-examining anybody, particularly a cooperator with a history of lying like Cohen, you do the things, I'm not sure the manner in which Blanche did it, but you obviously bring out all the different times he's lied. You particularly point out the time that he's lied under oath. But what you're really looking for is if you can catch him lying about something actually while he's sitting there on the witness stand. So the whole brouhaha yesterday was whether or not he was lying, I suppose, when he said on whatever that date was, October 24th or something like that, whether he actually talked to Trump to tell him that the payment had been made to the rock star Stormy Daniels. And I can't really tell because you're relying on people sitting there on the TV or things that you read in the newspaper. But if, in fact, it came across to the jury as if he absolutely lied about it, that would be something that would help the defense. On the other hand, I will say this business about it being conflicted with a text message, it's beyond my comprehension that the prosecutors wouldn't have noticed that in their preparation for trial and wouldn't have discussed it with him. It seems to me it had been a lot easier since it was, 8 years ago when all these phone calls took place? I don't remember the exact date. I can just tell you that right around that time I made the call, blah, blah, blah. But again, we have to qualify everything that we say here, whether we're lawyers or we're not, by saying that we're not there watching. You really need to be there to see what the effect is on the jury. And that's about all I can say. Well, one other thing I will say, for all the bullshit that we've listened to from Trump and his people, including all those whores that showed up from the government, the business about him being gagged, I think if the judge really wants to make a point, instead of just doing the usual, which happens in a criminal case, look, Mr. Smith, your lawyer says you don't want to testify. You know you could testify. Is your lawyer's statement accurate? And we always say yes. He should take 15 minutes and go through a whole routine with Trump. Cite some of the things that he's said, cite some of the things the rest of them have said. Make sure you understand, sir, gagging. This is the farthest thing from gagging. The chair sits right here. All you got to do is come in and sit in it and you can sit up here for 4 days if you want and be cross-examined, blah, blah, blah. I'd make a big stink. I don't know if he'll do that or not. But we know for sure that Trump's a coward. There's no way he's getting on the witness stand. No way.
All right. Anyone else? What do you think?
Yeah,
Bill, what do you think? Oh, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I look, a couple things. I think Steve's right. I don't know if these guys, if these attorneys who by reputation are really outstanding attorneys and outstanding cross-examiners, they have violated every rule of cross-examination I have ever known, ever tried to teach to associates. They've gone way too long. They had some real fodder and they beat it to death. And my experience with this, I mean, I've had other attorneys do this to my clients and my witnesses, is that inevitably there comes a point where it flips on them and people begin to feel sorry for the witness. Now, I don't know if you can feel sorry for Cohen. I mean, he is not the most appealing person in the world. I thought the prosecution did a good job of what they called scaffolding. They really provided all the support before he got on to support him. But, given what they now know about Trump and given what they now know about what his role is, this looks more like a racketeering trial every day that I see it. And it kind of beginning to go like the run of the mill. I hope that what Steve wishes to occur with the judge would occur. I don't think with this judge it will. He's far too measured. I think he ought to be taken to the woodshed on these issues. I'm trying to figure out why the judge allows him to bring all these Congress people in to say the things he can't say. I know it's not a technical violation of the gag order, but boy, I tell you, it walks the line, and it just proves what kind of guy he is.
So Bill, you didn't buy any Michael Cohen merch for all of us for Christmas.
You should not expect that or any tennis shoes from
Cooley Law School's most notable graduate. So
how about a Bible? At least a Bible. Come on, try to convert me, Bill.
Can I ask a question of the outstanding criminal lawyers we have here today? The thing that strikes me, and I was yesterday, I felt like torturing myself. So I had a 10-minute drive to Grosse Pointe Park, and I turned on the Mitch Albom show. And I heard him like just going over and over about what sleazebags Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen are, which no argument for me on this.
You would know.
Yeah, I know. Well, but my question is, at what point does the jury begin to see, well, if these are the people that he hangs with, I think he's probably, I mean, these aren't nice people, but neither is the guy who brought them into his orbit. Steve.
That's exactly 100% correct. And it's happened to, I'm sure it's happened to Joel in plaintiff's cases. I'm sure it's happened to Bill in his civil cases. And it's certainly something I always have to look out for. For years and years and years, as you guys know, I represented killers and dope dealers, and a lot of guys snitched on them. And I made a lot of headway cross-examining them, but I was always pretty careful about that because good prosecutors, the Tim Kennys and Bob Agacinskis of the world, if you go too far like that, what you just said, Nance, is exactly what the prosecutors will emphasize, and it's exactly what jurors pick up. Oh, yeah, they're shitheads, all right. And the shithead that's sitting in the defendant's chair is their dead buddy. I mean, you got to be very careful about stuff like that. So you've hit it right on the head, and I would not be surprised if a number of the jurors don't have the same feel. I mean, when you think about it, this is the president of the United States. I mean, you can say what you want about Biden or almost anybody that's been president, but they weren't hanging around with Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels, that's for sure.
Right.
Kennedy, for God's sake,
there's an old saying, birds of a feather flock together. And that's what you got here. And you have it, I would think, Steve, in some of your trials with, the criminals, that this is who criminals surround themselves with, other criminals, right? You're going to surround yourself with people who are malleable to what you want to do, who you can control, and you can say they're idiots, so I'm not guilty for anything they've done.
Right.
So I think that, there's that aspect here as well. But absolutely, he's tainted. Trump is tainted by the people that he surrounds himself with. And I think the jury will see that. It's a very easy thing to see.
Yeah. Okay.
So there is the possibility then that there will be a verdict within the next couple of weeks, well, at least some kind of outcome to this case. But we now hear that on June the 27th, apparently CNN has scheduled, and mark this down on your calendars, a debate between former President Trump and incumbent Joe Biden. And Allan, I believe we have some video.
We have 2 videos.
And breaking news just moments ago, President Biden throws down the gauntlet and frankly some shade to Donald Trump, challenging him to a debate.
Donald Trump lost 2 debates to me in 2020. And since then, he hadn't shown up for debate. Now he's acting like he wants to debate me again. Well, make my day, pal. I'll even do it twice. So let's pick the dates, Donald. I hear you're free on Wednesdays.
I know and moderately like. He ain't scared of nothing besides, natural causes.
And if at all possible, we probably shouldn't air it internationally. I feel like other countries are going to watch this and say, they have 330 million people, right? I don't know. It's just weird that it's those 2.
Huel, I take it you're not moderating this debate, but if you were, how would you feel about it?
Well, first of all, they have not set the guidelines yet. The Biden camp has proposed strict rules for at least the first debate. No audience, no cheering squad for either side. And the moderator will cut off the mic, and or the mic will be automatically cut off at the end of a certain period. So I'm not sure Trump will agree to these terms. Right. But look, Biden, I think, was smart to put out the invitation and make it public, but the rules are the key. It's how these candidates look before the public. I mean, and I don't know how many of you guys were around for the Nixon-Kennedy debates. You know the
ramifications. Remind us of how old we are.
Well,
I can't tell you how much I appreciate that.
But the point is, if it's set up the right way, Biden at least will have some kind of advantage that he wouldn't have otherwise. If you do the same thing that happened 4 years ago, Biden's in trouble. And I don't know if you heard Nancy Pelosi say it was a mistake. Biden should never even appear on the same stage as Trump. But if Biden can get Trump to agree to these rules, I think it's a go.
Do you think he has a choice, Joel?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
You think Trump it'd be okay for Trump not to show up?
We know both candidates very well. We know who they are, where they stand, what they intend to do. There will be no surprises for us. The thing that I think the American public wants to see is somebody getting beat up. They want to see somebody win or lose in a head-to-head matchup on stage. And that's just who we are as a country. We love to see that. But I think that the stakes for Biden are higher. Right. If he dodders on stage, if he appears old and wobbly, that's a big problem. But again, if he appears the way he did during his State of the Union speech, hey, that possibly could change their minds.
And I'll tell you that the no audience, given that Marjorie Taylor Greene would probably get an invite, and the craziness that some of those people do, right? I wouldn't budge on that if I were Biden. I just wouldn't budge on it. Right. She's crazy enough to say and or do anything, and I just wouldn't allow it.
And also, when you cut off the mic, I don't know if you remember the last debate between Trump and Biden. Trump was interrupting him hundreds of times. Right. It's ridiculous. So if you can have the moderator or have it done automatically, boom, love it.
Yeah. I love what his best line was. Will you shut up, man?
Do you remember when he debated Paul Ryan, though, for vice president? I mean, and that's the Joe Biden that I really like, because he laughed at Paul Ryan through the whole thing. And remember the whole thing about the paying for the war on a credit card? He's like, whoa, you don't have the real money. And it was hilarious. He's good at that. That's what Biden is best at.
But Barbara, I hate to tell you this, but it's appearances. It's appearances. The sweat on Nixon's brow changed everything. If Biden is teetering and doddering, if he appears old, right, that's a problem for him.
But he hasn't. He hasn't been public things, and Trump just looks deranged every moment. And if we can just start on like Johnny stuff, then we've got.
I don't think either of these candidates was actually made for ultra high definition TV. So
You understand
I think the one thing is that you can't. Trump is not going to be able to help himself. It's like putting a pit bull on stage with a cat and saying, "Okay, sit." He's going to go. I mean, he sees Biden as, game for him to go after. I think he can't control himself.
He has no boundaries or limitations.
Right, and that's what his idiot followers like about him is they
right.
Exactly. Not constrained. Yeah. It's fucking nuts.
Yep. Yeah. They like he's going up against the man, not knowing that he is the man.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I wasn't around for the Kennedy-Nixon debates, but it made me think of back when I was in 8th grade. I really feel for RFK being excluded. I feel like all those school dances where I just sat out. You
didn't even have a worm in your brain.
Well, I mean, it was a rough time, but I got over it. Thank you. I boycotted the prom just because of that.
That's what turned him into a goth. So yeah.
Turned him into a goth. Yes. Yes. Well, the RFK Jr. is not going to be in the debate. He seems to have been jilted. How do you think this is going to play out? I mean, he's certainly going to get some mileage out of it, which he currently is as well.
I don't think people.
I don't think it's. I don't know. I mean, I kind of feel like he's going to be like the summer romance. He's fun to make out with a little bit, and well, not really, but you know what I mean. He's just like, it's like, those love affairs that just kind of explode and then they fade just as quickly. I feel like all he has to do is open his mouth and say a few more crazy things in his croaky voice, and people are going to start saying, "Really, dude?" So yeah.
So Nancy beer goggles went out after LASIK surgery became big. I don't think that's going to help.
Joel, I'm interested in Huel's perspective on this. Kennedy scares the hell out of me because I don't know. I have no idea where he's going to draw votes from. I have no idea. But in this close of a race, when you look at the polls now, when you're talking about a race that is razor thin, you've got to worry about anybody who comes in, Jill Stein, Robert Kennedy, anybody who's on that ballot who draws just a point or two.
That's true.
You know what? I think a couple. Oh, go ahead, you.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Alan.
No, I think a couple things.
You're listening, Fox 2. You can't be this polite. And I know Fox 2 wasn't, but you can't be this polite on this show.
Although I was on Fox, I never followed the party line. Never. And you know what?
This is like let it rip, but you can say F-bombs. So there you go.
Right.
Oh, okay.
The Libertarian Party in 2016 got about the candidate Johnson, I think, got about 150,000 votes in Michigan. Jill Stein got 50,000 votes. And I think a lot of people didn't show up in 2016 because they thought Hillary Clinton's going to win. It's going to be. And so I think there's more of an alarmist feeling this time, like, holy shit, Trump can really win. He has won before. And I think there's room with RFK to take some votes away and for Biden to still win. But who knows?
I'm not sure. I mean, some of the polling shows that it looks like he may take votes away from Trump, but I still want to hear what Huel says because he's on top of this more than I am.
Well, no, I'm not. I'm retired.
If I ever retire too, I'm still going to stay in contact with the law. You can't help yourself. You don't do this for as long as you do and stay out of it. Go ahead.
Well, I find the timing. I find the timing of this interesting because the debate is going to be on Thursday, the 24th. There's still 1 day remaining in the term of the Supreme Court. And there could be a ton of decisions coming out that day that would be perhaps consequential to certainly the debate. And Biden could really use it as a cudgel. Steve.
I was really glad to see, speaking of the Supreme Court, that the same guys, Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito, who don't give a flying fuck about a woman's right to do things with her own body, certainly like to hide behind the fact that it's their wife who did X, Y, or Z. You see that independent woman that flew that flag up. It had nothing to do with me. It was my wife, just like Clarence Thomas. But when it comes to any other decision on the planet, women are like they were in the 14th century. But when it comes to their own house, you see, they run the show. That guy, Alito and Thomas, they should have a contest that we could all vote on. Who's the biggest hypocrite in the world? Which one? One Alito or two Thomas? That was unbelievable.
And Nancy, you can give me a fatwa on the use of this word. Who's the more uxorious?
Oh, I was going to use the cruder term "pussy whipped," but there you go. You know,
I have to have a certain decorum, Nancy, because as you know, since 9/11, they always come after the host. So,
in all honesty, what for these guys, you know, all of these MAGA types, they all want to talk about.
Can I stop you for 1 second, Steve? Does everybody know what we're talking about? Did everybody see the news today? Because it occurs to me that this was like a New York Times exclusive. It hit the morning shows, but I mean, everybody. Apparently, Samuel Alito's house had an upside down American flag flying after January 6th, just a couple days before the inauguration, which has been which was adopted by the Trumpers as, you know, it's an international sign of distress, and it was so anyway. So go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, it cracks me up that these MAGA types, you know, you read this all the time. It's all about being manly and taking, you know, the men do this and the men do that. And man, as soon as either of the two of them get their foot in it, they blame it. Oh, it was my wife's doing. I'm not going to use your phrase, Nance, but I just sit around the house and she does whatever she wants, you know.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I come home, I write the checks. Yeah. One of those guys when you ask them, you know, you want to do something on you want to come over for dinner on Saturday, let me ask the boss, you know, that kind of
exactly.
You leave Springsteen out of this. Well, I mean, inflation has crossed the 20% threshold, more in certain sectors. Clearly, this is going to be something that Trump is going to use as a cudgel in the debate. Is there a chance that the inflation rate can go down? I mean, on the one hand, you've got 20% inflation. At the same time, you've got a stock market that's 40,000 for the Dow, which was another big talking point for Trump. How's this going to play out?
I think groceries have gone down. You know, they say the price of groceries has just gone down this month. I think part of that is with eggs and a few other items. But
well, I can tell you this. The price of dinner out at restaurants, and Huel and I are going to see this evening.
Yes, we
when
are.
He and I go with our wives to the Beverly Hills Grill. The price of dinners, I just got two kids graduating law school, two different places a week apart, and I cannot tell you how much dough it cost me to go out to goddamn dinner. So wherever the inflation is going down, it ain't going down in restaurants. I can tell you that.
You're absolutely right. Costs are really, I mean, you talk about eggs going down. That was a spike that was caused by avian flu. So, I mean, if you
so when the check comes around, who's running to the men's room first?
I don't call either one of these guys judge. So, I mean, I'm not, you know, judges have the shortest arms and the deepest pockets. Those guys aren't judges.
Keep in mind.
You just stole my answer. That was my answer for sure. There were no judges at the table, so we can't tell you.
Keep in mind that the inflation is calculated from a variety of things that cost money, and from what I can read or about and you know, understand as a word person plunged into a math field, it's basically there's certain things that just simply refuse to come down, and one of them is rent, and one of them is real estate, and it's just, I mean, I looked at some sales figures for Grosse Pointe. And all I can tell you guys is you better get your lease locked in if you're going to open, you know, the Grosse Pointe, if the Troika is going to open a Grosse Pointe office, because it's unbelievable. I mean, what houses are selling for. I mean, some average 3-bedroom a block over sold for like $450,000. I was like, what? So anyway, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Restaurants, people are getting, you know, the pay at restaurants is so much higher now. Like the guy at, this is a while ago, the guy at Moot's Pizza there on Library Street is paying like his people like $22 an hour. You know, it's hard, but White Castle, they're paying $15 an hour. I mean, you know, 4 or 5 years ago, that was unheard of. those people were getting paid $10 an hour. So the costs of everything is particularly in the restaurant businesses.
Yeah,
but Allan, now that weed is legal, I mean, you need those sliders even more. So I mean, you need people working.
Bud tenders make a lot of money too.
Yeah. And by the way, Michael,
I think I'm a little more philosophical about this. I confess, we eat out a lot, and I don't like how much we're paying. However, I do realize where the money is going right now, and it's going to people who have not been able to make a living by working one job. Is that me?
Yeah, that's me.
No.
I don't know.
No, go ahead. I think it was Joel.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So while I'm
just sitting, I have no idea what I'm doing.
And so if, to the extent that this is going to make people create a situation where people can have a livable wage, I don't mind paying it. I don't see necessarily that it's going into the owner's pockets. I don't see this as indiscriminate increases. So, but I'm the guy who used to leave an awfully big tip because that extra $5 meant a lot more to the waiter or waitress than it did to me. And I think we've got to consider that. We have to consider the fact that we've become a consumer society much more than a manufacturing society. We're not making things, and these people do deserve to earn a reasonable living.
So Michael in Florida has an $8 omelet. Just to tell you, Michael, you're getting off pretty easy because at IHOP, it's $14 for an omelet.
I was just going to say that's quite a lot. I've been a lot more in my own kitchen, so that's for that very reason. But
hourly wage workers, wait staff in stores, all these people, they make money. It goes directly back into the economy. It goes immediately back into the economy and feeds the economy. It's like you go to Target, you go to Meijer, you go to any of these places, it's full of people walking around shopping.
Yeah.
Somerset Collection, always busy. Craft stores, always busy. And that's because people are getting a little bit more in their pocket, but they're using it. When the money goes to the top, we never see it again.
Exactly.
And I think that they're also, I don't feel bad for owners. Are fine. Is that me or is that?
I think that might be Joel.
Yeah, Joel. Why don't you come back? Why don't you pop out and come back in?
Okay.
Well, Barb, there's a way, Barb, to test that hypothesis now because the Lions are giving Jared Goff a 4-year extension worth $212 million. So let's see if he picks up a few more checks. Yes. Quite a stunning upgrade on his contract.
I'll stay.
Yeah. I mean, so basically, is that something on the lines of, gosh, I can't even do the math. Is it like 10 million? No, it can't be that much. A couple million a game? I guess if you look at it,
you're risking your life as a quarterback in the NFL. So why not?
I can tell you this. Whatever they're paying ball players in every sport, they're making money. They're billionaires. These leagues are making that kind of money. Nobody should shake their head and say, "Oh, this is awful. How can a quarterback?" This is the way this is, and don't worry, it ain't coming out of the owner's pockets. That's for sure.
Well, that's true, but here's my problem with it, Steve. As opposed to the waitresses and waiters and bartenders, my problem with it is what you effectively do is price the average person, certainly the average family, out of going to a game. I mean, it's just gotten so expensive to go to a Lions game.
And
yet all the sporting events,
they still go. And yet they still go.
Yeah.
I don't know how many of you are season ticket holders, but you have to pay a lot more to get your season tickets this year.
Right.
And, a lot more.
There you go.
They sell out already?
There you go.
I think the one.
But Huel, do you think it's the average? Do you think that the average Joe, the guy who?
No, I don't, because this is not for the average Joe. It's for people who can afford to go.
Exactly.
The owners don't care whether you're an average Joe or you're a suite holder. They just want to make money. And they make money. Having an NFL franchise is a guarantee to make money, no matter what, because they all share in the TV revenue. which keeps going up. So, hey, it doesn't matter. If you come, if the average schmo comes, it doesn't matter. The owners are going to make their money, and either you go there in person or you watch it on TV. It's an incredible business.
Allan,
I think I agree. These guys should get whatever they can get. The sport. I mean, the NFL is a particularly very wealthy league. It's the league now. It used to be, I think, the NBA really had it together in marketing, but the NFL is really taking it to new heights. The thing is, in Detroit, we love the blue collar, working class, grit, and all that kind of stuff. And I think it becomes a little bit harder for the fans to feel the connect with these guys when they're making $50 million a year. And I'm not faulting them for it, but I think it just...
Allan,
Allan,
they
you're
don't
totally
care.
wrong.
Allan, they don't care. Just win, baby.
Yeah,
as
that's
long
it.
as you win, we'll love you. They don't
right.
care how much you're making. And if you win the Super Bowl, we're going to applaud you for making $212 million. No,
if you read the articles today in the paper about Goff and the re-signing, he does seem like he's a real good guy. He can't go to the grocery store without people chanting, Jared Goff, Jared Goff. They don't give a shit how much money he makes.
Exactly.
Just keep winning. Huel's right. Just win, baby. That's it.
There you go.
Yeah.
They're entertainers.
Has he not heard of Instacart or DoorDash to, get the groceries brought to him? Well, no, I remember reading a statistic that on your average flight, if the airline fills in the business class seats on an international flight, they've paid for the flight. And everybody sitting back in coach is just gravy. And I think that Huel, the point that you made, that the fans at in the stands are just the gravy compared to the TV revenue and the merch. So you got that. But I'll tell you what's the biggest threat to the United States: Chinese EVs, because President Biden has imposed a 100% tariff on Chinese EVs. And I had to actually explain to somebody that doesn't mean that if you buy a Chinese EV, you get another one free. I mean, this is pretty low-hanging lychee fruit to go ahead and pick on the Chinese. And it seems as though he was trying to outflank Trump's China phobia. China is kicking our can around the world when it comes to Chinese built EVs. They're going to get the market in Australia. They're probably going to get the market even in their big rivals now, India. Is this even helpful, especially for a climate action president? Allan?
I mean, Ford, GM are so far behind. Tesla is really the only American company that is really ahead in the EV, and the Chinese are a big threat. But GM and Ford are just kind of clueless. They're going to be left in the dust, and maybe this helps them, but I don't know. I think China is just waiting to get into this market, and they'll kill it. They'll come in with a cheaper car, probably a better made car. And like I say, the only one who's really been at the forefront is Tesla. But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Anybody else in the group drive an EV? So I drive one, and I wouldn't drive a Tesla if you gave it to me, mainly because I'm not giving money to him. But once you get past that. So I drive a Polestar, which was a joint venture between Volvo and Geely, which was a Chinese manufacturer. It's a great car, but again, when you talk about Ford and GM, they've got some fairly decent EV at very high prices.
Right.
But the tariff is on these cars that are coming in that would be a great deal for mass consumers. And if you're concerned about climate change, we've got to get out of the internal combustion engine.
Yeah.
So I'm, while I'm a supporter of President Biden, because I certainly don't want Donald Trump elected, I disagree with him on this. I think that he's making a mistake, and I think he's hurting the American consumer. And actually, while I'm a big supporter of the American auto industry, the truth is that they do better when they have to compete. Mm-hmm. And they did better when Honda Civics took over. Mm-hmm. They learned how to make better automobiles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
So
smaller ones.
I wouldn't do it.
Well, as much as I hate to preface this comment with the phrase, as someone who recently returned from Europe.
No, you don't, Nancy. No, you don't.
I have to say that was one of the eye-opening things that we saw over there, which was the widespread adoption of EVs. EVs are reasonably common now in the Detroit area. You see them, but you see one or two a day. Particularly in the larger cities in Italy, the majority of cars were at least hybrids, and quite a few of them were EVs, and tiny EVs, smart cars. There's something called a Twizy that looks like a roller skate. It's got one seat and some room in the back for your groceries or a friend, and that's about it. I mean, it's, they have different they have parking problems, and there's a lot more going on over there.
Congestion charges,
exactly. In Paris, the mayor has made keeping the central city completely combustion free, some goal in the next couple of years. So there's a lot more going on over there. But I mean, these are cars that a lot of Americans would be frightened of, because in the United States, you feel like you have to drive a fucking truck or you're going to get killed, smeared all over the freeway. Well, that's not what happened when people started driving Honda Civics. I mean,
right.
There's a market for these cars. I think it's untapped in this country, because right now you want an EV, you got to get something that's pretty big. So
I think Nancy, now there's hope that the Venus de Milo will get EV charging cables for arms. So so that could happen. Barb.
The auto companies figured out a while ago that their greatest profit margin is over these big giant bully trucks.
Right.
That's what makes the most money. None of them are making
Malibu.
None of them are making a sedan anymore after this year. None of them are making a small car. I have a little Focus that I named Zippy because I can zip around all these little fuckers in their giant things. But people don't want to. People here are convinced that they don't want that. It shows their American individualism, or it shows their large package, or whatever it is that they think they've got. And you'll get used to it, Huel.
Well, but Barb,
I have a very big car. I have a Cadillac.
Company accepted, of course.
But Barb, I think you're onto something. I don't think it's a coincidence that in Europe, where the birth rate is only 1.4, they drive small cars. So, Allan.
Go ahead.
I think, we're going to see, first of all, we thought the autonomous cars, we'd have autonomous driving by 2024, 2025. It looks like we may not have that. We'll have a lot of the components of that in our cars, but we may not have an autonomous car. I don't know when. The other issue is I think hybrids are going to be really the wave. I think right now, the downside right now, there's not enough charging stations for electric cars. The batteries, particularly in the winter, run down much quicker. And they're heavier on the roads. They do more damage to the roads. And they do a lot of environmental damage in third world countries where we're getting the materials from. So I think hybrids may end up being sort of the way to go, but I could be wrong. So
yeah.
Well, more on the local front, we have an issue when it comes to wages, I suppose, or negative wages. WDIV, Channel 4, has announced that it has offered buyouts to some of its broadcasters, and it looks like perhaps 3 of those are apt to take it. Allan, I think you did some reporting on this.
I did, and then I'd love to hear Huel's take on this. I did. They're both, and you know what? It's WDIV is owned by Graham Holdings, and I get my pension from Graham Holdings, and basically the pension has always been overfunded. And so for year after year, I took a buyout in 2008. They were overfunded. And so it didn't cost them in the bottom line, in their budgetary line, to buy out. So they're buying out contracts for Bernie Smilovitz, who I'm going to guess was probably making at least $200,000, if not, or $300,000.
Way more.
Way more, yeah. And Mara McDonald was probably making what the old reporters were making, which was better than the new reporters are making now. And the same thing with Rod Maloney. And so they're getting rid of those. They're taking out of the pension the Hathaway. What's the Hathaway Berkshire Hathaway? Berkshire Hathaway is what is funding a lot of these pension funds in the Graham Holdings. So it's costing them nothing. They're getting rid of it. What it's going to cost is perhaps ratings. I think we're seeing some places like Channel 7 and even Fox with Huel going. It takes a while to rebuild a loyalty there. Huel, what's your thoughts?
I'm sorry to see it happen, but frankly, it's almost inevitable. The same thing that happened to you at the newspaper is now happening to the broadcast industry. All eyes are now addicted to what's online. And so viewership has declined dramatically in the last few years. I'm lucky to have retired when I did. I didn't have to face this, but every TV station in the country is facing the same dilemma. You got these huge salaries, these huge contracts that you made when viewership was higher, and now the viewership is down. You cannot justify the ad rates. And so you're looking at a difficult situation. Look, I know Bernie, I know Mara, I've met Rod, but it's a tough situation. I know the general manager of DIV. Right. And I was speaking to somebody in management that I worked with a few years ago, and he says that it's just a no-win situation. They've got to do this in order to keep the profits up. They got to make money.
But
go ahead.
I was going to say they're voluntary. Like at the Post we had, they were voluntary buyouts, and for some people, I mean, I took it early. I was 54 when I took it, and I just kept going on other things. But Rod Maloney about to retire. Bernie is way beyond, was talking about retiring a long time ago. For them to take a buyout is a no-brainer. I think Mara's in her late 50s. I don't know what she's got planned, but she's been there for 20 years. And so for them, it's not necessarily a hardship, but it really sets, I think, and maybe, I think it sets back those channels, the loyalty. People start scrambling for, and I've seen the comments on our page saying, screw Channel 4, I'm not watching them anymore. Why are they doing this? And blah, blah, blah. They're kind of looking a little evil when in fact they're making these offers. I don't think there was at the Post, there were a couple really high profile people they wanted to push out, were making huge salaries. And so for them, there was a little bit of the foot on the neck and said, these are voluntary, but not necessarily.
And these are voluntary too, but look, Bernie thought of retiring when his wife died a few months ago.
Right.
But I'm glad he came back. So it's a difficult situation. I don't know what the answer will be for each. And I know too, by the way, that other people have been offered buyouts. Mm-hmm. We know these three, but there are others who are also on that list.
Right.
And it's not just a Channel 4. Like I've represented a number of folks in the broadcasting industry, and they've come to me with these new contracts where draconian provisions and cuts in pay, and it's been very, very tough. I have and I agree with everything Huel said. I think he's absolutely right about the pressure. I have a greater concern, and that is what's happened to the quality of local news and what it means in terms of the general society. A million years ago when I had hair on my head and it was dark, I was a school teacher, and one of my assignments every year in social studies was, okay, you got to watch a week of national news and a week of local news, and I made them compare and contrast what was more relevant to your life. Is it important to watch both of them, or could you just get away with watching the national news? And we talked about that. And I like to think that I created a group of students who were more informed citizens as a result of that. Mm-hmm. What I worry about, I agree with you, everybody's looking online for everything right now. And unfortunately, they're looking at their little niche of the world. And so if you're a Trumper, you're looking at particular websites. If you're a left-winger, you're looking at other websites. And you're not getting the kind of cross-section of information that I think is critical.
Well, I've said many times, the evil genius of Roger Ailes created this world.
Yeah.
He realized that if he simply gives people news that justifies their beliefs,
right,
he'd make money. And Rupert bought into it, and it worked. That is how Fox News was created. That's why it's still the powerhouse it is today. Even though they've been successfully sued for lying, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because viewers, by and large, want to see things that justify what they already think, and that's an even bigger problem.
Well, also, Huel, because I don't think that the viewers have any moral hazard because they don't feel as though they paid out any of that money in the defamation suit. So for them, they're still paying free.
In the early days of internet newspapers on the internet, there was a thing that I think Knight Ridder had for a while called Newshound. Woohoo, Newshound. And it was like the idea was it would fetch you your news every day. And what you did is you essentially told it the things you were interested in, like, whatever. And it would go out and it would bring you a little custom designed newspaper with stories about these topics for you.
Yeah.
Well, I never trusted it because I'm like, the best thing about opening a newspaper or watching a broadcast TV is being surprised by something. I mean, that's the nature of news. It's like, yeah, I want all the news I can find on Warren Zevon and, whatever. But I also want to find something. I want to face something that I did not expect to see. And you can't, at the time, Newshound couldn't handle that. And that's what I think is really missing. When you are living in a bubble of people who tell you that your beliefs are correct and that you are, you're a good person and everything that you already believe is absolutely true, you are being sadly misinformed.
Yeah, but those people
by your media.
Those people vote, Nancy.
I know they do. I realize they do. In fact,
that's why we are where we are.
When we get to Schmucks, I may have a few that I need to name here. But yeah, you're right.
Right. I also think that we're losing history, we're losing context, we're losing expertise with these people.
Yep.
There's a reason that again, we can talk about whether salaries are outrageous or not, but that's what the market bears. Bernie Smilovitz knows a lot about Detroit sports. He knows a lot about Detroit sports. And so he can look at something current and he can put it into context. And the same with all the news, the news people. It's sad. I was at I worked for the company made by the Joint Operating System. So I had free range to the whole building and watching desks empty out.
Yeah.
Empty out. I would walk through when I worked nights, I'd go through and there was entire sections of that building that was empty.
Exactly.
Right.
And it was horrifying to me. And as angry and mad as I was at the papers, probably most of the time I was there, I grew up reading both papers. And I know that when I was a tot, my parents got all three papers.
Right.
And I think, and that was because their desire to know everything, both, all of the sides. And I think that you're right, but I'm just sorry. I'm just sorry that authoritative, not authoritative, but people, they know what they're talking about and they're going to be gone.
Authoritative.
I'll be happy.
So Barb, were those three papers the News, the Free Press, and the Metro Times?
It actually was.
I remember the times.
Short time, but yeah.
It's interesting to give a historical perspective. Unfortunately, I do remember the Kennedy-Nixon debates, though I was a mere child. One of the things that could not or would not happen today was the turn in public opinion on the Vietnam War caused by Walter Cronkite. My dad and I were on opposite sides of the universe on that, and CBS Evening News once had me on a little clip talking about trouble on America's college campuses, and my father turned off Walter Cronkite. As far as anybody knows, it was the first, last, and only time that ever happened. But my father's opinion began to turn when Walter Cronkite turned, when he started showing things that nobody else was showing on television and turning against the war. It changed the opinion, and nobody could really accuse Walter Cronkite of having an agenda. He just saw things and was reporting.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, now you say, "Hey, I read this," and you'll be having a discussion with somebody who disagrees with you, and they'll say, "Well, where did you read that?" And I'll say, "New York Times." Like, New York Times. So well, Washington Post too, and they go, "Oh, Washington Post, even worse." And so there is no person of authority. It's not Rachel Maddow, and it's not the nightly newscast.
You guys have to stop watching cable news. Cable news is
Nancy. I think you have to start watching cable news.
Garbage. It is absolute garbage. And
what do you mean, Nancy? It's just all bullshit.
It is. I mean, I get my information. I do get it online, but I pay for subscriptions to legit newspapers like the New York Times, the Washington Post.
I do too. I read. I've got Wall Street
Journal,
Washington Post, Daily Beast.
But the only people that think the New York Times is a liberal paper are people that don't read the New York Times.
Exactly.
It's not a liberal paper.
Yeah.
See, I mean, I read the Christian Science Monitor. I had to tell somebody that Tom Cruise is not the editor. So one thing I do want to get to before we go to commercial is former mayor Kwame Kilpatrick is requesting a restitution hearing. Claims that he doesn't owe the government any money, and in fact, in his request for hearing about the garnishment and claim for exemptions, where it says, "I request a hearing about the garnishment for the following reasons," he wrote it in cursive writing. "I don't believe I owe the government any monies. I believe that Treasury funds and other money are exempt from government." Signed, Kwame Kilpatrick.
Wait, what?
I wonder where he heard that.
He apparently owed the government $4 million in restitution, which was then reduced to $1.7 million. And now he says, "I don't owe them anything." Steve,
it's been reduced even more. But go ahead.
So let me try to give you, hopefully, a somewhat accurate summary. When he was first sentenced, the restitution that Judge Edmonds imposed was in the $4 million. Okay. And then the Court of Appeals, the Sixth Circuit, they affirmed his conviction, they affirmed the sentence, but they lowered the restitution amount to what you just said. What he kind of leaves out of the equation is that they got a large portion, almost all of that, from Bobby Ferguson, who was the co-defendant. You have to understand, almost all the time in federal cases, all of the liability, the restitution, is usually joint and several. So when they got money from Bobby, that knocked his money there. He's talking about like 120 grand or something like that. And what he's really talking about is like $6,500 when he's talking about this. It should be exempt, blah, blah, blah. It's just complete horse manure is what he's doing. And for the life of me, I don't understand why. When you have restitution, unless the government can show otherwise, I have guys who owe $2 million and they're paying $100 a month for the rest of their life because they make whatever they make. I have no idea what this guy is doing these days. I read the same as you guys do about big houses and all that stuff.
He's got a job. Well, he's got two things.
So just pay. If he's got a job, if he's making $100 grand a year, I'm telling you, with any decent lawyer, he'll pay $200 a month or something like that. So he's just. It's hard to believe that a guy can be the way he is. I knew his dad, not his mom, but I don't know how the guy could be that way. But he really owes nothing. He's arguing about nothing, basically.
He's got a job in. He lives in Georgia, but he's got a job in Tennessee as I think he's the director of some like prison reform thing. I think he makes about $120,000 a year. Then he's got a virtual ministry, which he gets donations and sells stuff. So I think he's making money there. His wife is investing. They have it under his wife that she bought an $800,000 home in Novi. So there is some gelt there, as they say in the old neighborhood.
He's hanging out with Trump. He's been instructed. You don't pay those bills. Those bills are for other people.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly.
But Alan, he may have the guilt, but I don't understand why he's spinning the dreidel in court. So, there you go.
Got the guilt and the guilt.
You're welcome, Bill.
I thought we were going to clean this up a little bit because Huel was going to be on. I'm glad to see that we're all just who we are.
It ain't over yet. So
you guys are nuts. I love it.
Steve,
if you want to make a nice, safe bet, I think you could safely bet, even on FanDuel, that Judge Edmonds is not going to grant his handwritten motion. I think that's a pretty safe bet.
Right.
Listen, I the fact that there's a hearing at least scheduled, I understand, would make me worry if I was Kwame. The only reason that I can imagine that Judge Edmonds, who pretty
damn good judge,
pretty good judge, The only reason that I can imagine her allowing a hearing on this would be to call him out on it. But
I'll bet 50 cents. That's the most I bet on anything. There won't be any hearing. There'll be an opinion in order, and that'll be the end.
That's I wouldn't take the other side of that bet, Steve. I'm surprised that any hearing would be scheduled. I mean, it just seemed ridiculous.
I think you're missing the point, Bill. I think Kwame's betting against himself so that he has enough money to pay the restitution. Exactly.
Right. Wow.
Alan, why don't we go to commercial?
Without Project Clean Slate, there is no telling where I would be right now.
It gave him back his life, because once he got the felony, it seemed like life was over.
Being unemployed, being depressed, being a burden. Project Clean Slate helped wipe those things away. I can't say thank you enough. I am now able to work for a reputable airline. Detroit had my back, all because I live in Detroit.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
All right, and now it's time for
Downtown Detroit, Robert Wells, Schmuck of the Week.
Okay, we are going for Schmuck of the Week. So, Huel, I know that you are a novice at this. I mean, actually, you're a rookie at this. So, would you like to go first, or would you like to see how it's done?
Let me see how it's done.
Okay, in that case, Steve.
Well, the easy schmuck choice was going to be the whole gang of idiots that came there to support Trump in his trial and disrupted the proceedings, et cetera. But early this morning, I got a better candidate. And I don't know the guy's name, but whoever it is from the Louisville Police Department that stopped Masters champion Scotty Scheffler, who was just trying to get in to play in the PGA in his second round and was driving in a vehicle that was well marked as a PGA championship vehicle, blah, blah, blah. This cop decided that he was somehow violating the whole rules of the world, jumped on his side of the car, ran along with them. They wind up taking the guy to jail. And this is a very, very religious guy who's very low key, just had a new baby. They take him to jail. He's charged with about 6 different offenses and a couple of felonies. And at the same time, they take a photo of him in the orange jumpsuit that you get when you go to the jail. And then they realize, well, wait a minute. They release him without bond. They let him go. And now he's out there playing in the second round of PGA after having gone through all this. So whoever that officer is, he's the schmuck of the week, and I hope he becomes an ex-officer fairly quickly.
Yeah, but
and then
he'll
get hired by another department somewhere. So,
he birdied the first hole today.
Well, he's the best player in the world, so I mean that doesn't surprise me. But
talk about having some ice in the veins on that one.
Yeah.
Nancy.
All right, I'm taking the other low-hanging fruit, and I'm sorry if anybody else had this on their list, and that is Harrison Butker, who is the kicker for the Kansas City Chiefs, who is in the news this week for making a inflammatory, ignorant commencement speech at a Catholic college in which he essentially told women that their real job was to stay home and raise babies, blah, 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 blah. But I have just a couple of things to say about him. Number one, that I'm echoing somebody that I read online. That is a hell of a lot of product to put in your hair for a heterosexual man. So I'm just saying that. And the other thing is, a few months ago, a rock band that was poised on the brink of success flamed out in their very first appearance at after the keyboard player was arrested for on some child pornography charges. And my daughter, who is a sound engineer and moves in that circle, said that the overwhelming comment among people that knew about this was, I can't believe this band fell apart over a keyboard player. Okay, so a lot who are the most replaceable members of, unless you're Rick Wakeman, the most replaceable members of any band. But I think a lot of bad publicity is going to fall on the Kansas City Chiefs over this, and it's all going to be for a fucking kicker, and that just is kind of mordantly funny and but he is most definitely a schmuck. So,
did you read the response from the Benedictine nuns?
Oh, they're furious at him.
They
smoked
him. They smoked him. You don't piss off a nun. It's
No.
a bad idea.
What did they say?
They're like, we train women for careers. These are women that are getting doctorates that
Yeah.
within this crowd, and maybe they will choose to be mothers, and choice being, I mean, and I'm paraphrasing it, but it did go on in much more elegant language than I can muster.
Yes.
But yeah, no, they flamed him. It was great.
Well, and did you also hear that apparently this guy, Harrison Butker, was raised by a woman with like a PhD who is like she's a physicist or something. She does important work in academic physics. And I'm like, mommy issues? I mean, really? Come on. It's like,
and that's weird. Oh my God.
So,
I think the rest of the letter, Barb said that the nuns trained women to climb every mountain. So yeah. And by the way, Nancy, your daughter should know this, that the most indispensable member of any band is the cowbell player.
Yeah.
So there you go.
She's a rhythm
All right.
player, so there you go.
Okay. Huel, you've got some warm up now. Who's your schmuck?
My schmuck is Governor Greg Abbott in Texas, who has released a convicted killer, Daniel Perry. This guy was driving for Uber, ran his Uber into a crowd of Black Lives Matter protesters. A guy named Garrett Foster, because in Texas everybody has a gun. A guy named Garrett Foster had an AK-47, like rifle. He knocked on the window of Daniel's car. Daniel shot him, killed him right there. He was convicted unanimously by jury. Okay. But Governor Abbott said, no, we should let him go because in Texas, our stand your ground law is sacrosanct and cannot be qualified by a jury. And so apparently in Texas, as the girlfriend of the deceased said today, in Texas, not every life matters. As long as you're white, and you carry a gun and you kill people whose beliefs do not comport with yours, it's okay. Greg Abbott, once again.
Is a member of the Black Lives Don't Matter.
Right. But look, Garrett is white. Here's the thing. Garrett is white.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Crazy.
Yep. That's a good one.
Okay. Joel.
Okay, I am going to go with Lauren Boebert, but for a different reason. At the time that she was at Trump's trial, her son was being tried, I believe in Colorado, for theft. He and some friends had engaged in some larcenous activity. So the fact that she's supporting Trump at his trial as opposed to her son at his trial, where he has criminal penalties, could go to jail, go to prison, is absurd. What type of mother is she? What type of mother would do that? To support Trump over your own child? How, what soul is left of yours? So it's just, she's my schmuck. I
know the answer. None. She has no soul.
Once again.
To me that she would be spouting bullshit for Trump as opposed to, her son's got to be terrified being with your kid at maybe the toughest time of his life. So she's just a schmuck, and I can't stand her. So that's it for that reason.
All right. Bill, by the way, next time you're in court, I want you to do an entire cross-examination of rhetorical questions and see how the witness answers those. Okay. Barb.
I'm not so sure I haven't done that in the past. Okay.
Continuing with the He-Man Woman Haters Club, I have New Hampshire State Rep Jesse Edwards, who says he is against banning marriage for children under 18 because they are ripe and fertile.
Wow.
Wow, what type of usage is that? Ripe and fertile.
Ripe and fertile.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did Barb, did he say that they're goers? as we would say in England? Wow. Okay, Bill.
You can't pull a line like that and then ask me to say anything.
But you're a professional.
This is kind of low-hanging fruit, and I want to introduce it this way. Joni, who many of you know, my lovely wife, came up to me. She's the calmest, coolest, most wonderful person on earth. Enraged at a particular member of the House of Representatives Marjorie Taylor Greene, who we all know well and love, destroyed a oversight committee hearing yesterday with this comment about a different member of the committee. She said, "I don't think you know what you're here for. I think your fake eyelashes are messing with what you're reading." And OJC decided that she needed to jump in. So for about an hour and a half, the committee hearing was disrupted. I don't know why they let Marjorie Taylor Greene continue to speak in Congress. The woman is crazed. She makes Bobbert look reasonable, if that's possible.
And the fact that they hate each other is just the cherry on the sundae.
And the woman she insulted came back at her and said, "Well, what did you bleach blonde, bush body?"
Yeah. Right. And Jamie Raskin lost it. It was awesome. Jamie Raskin's face trying to keep his shit together while this was going on. That was great.
Well,
but it's embarrassing.
But wait a minute. Yeah.
Country.
Look, again, I want to go back a million years to when I was a teacher. Our kids see this on the news, and they think this is what the government is about. Yep. No wonder there's not much respect for anything. Yep. I mean,
it's a Jerry Springer show. It's nothing more than
Jerry Springer wasn't this bad.
And Jerry Springer had a security guy that would pull people apart when he needed to. You're absolutely right, Bill. And that is, I think, going to be one of the follow-on after Trump is, rotting in his grave somewhere. That's going to be one of the things that we still are going to have to work out of the system is this. I mean, you can laugh about the gentle lady from Georgia, that kind of thing. But when this is, you're right. People look at this and they think, well, I can play that game. So you end up with George Santos and, building his brand. Yeah.
All right. Allan.
I'm going to go with Senator Mitt Romney, who is saying that if he were Biden, he would have pardoned taken all the federal charges off because it would make Biden look big and Trump look small. He also said that he would be like LBJ would have gotten hold of the state prosecutor in New York and said, "You either dropped it or I'm going to run somebody against you." These people do not give a shit about the law. It's like the law only applies to other people, not Republicans and not privileged Republicans like us. I mean, Trump is talking about pardoning.
This can't be new news to you. I mean,
no,
the laws never applied equally to rich and poor people ever.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's disgraceful. But.
He's
I must commend you. I mean, you pretty much. I had to go 6 schmucks deep because you guys ran the table on all of my schmucks. But my schmuck of the week is actually the Western media for its almost total news blackout of some very important hearings going on at The Hague today and yesterday. This is in context of South Africa's lodging the complaint of genocide against Israel. Yesterday and today were hearings about South Africa calling for an immediate ceasefire, claiming that Israel has in fact breached what had been the provisional hearings several months ago. The fact that Al Jazeera, which was then banned by the Israeli cabinet for being a national security risk on threat in Israel, is really the only one covering it. Doesn't bode well for the West's claim that we are the beacons of free press and having objective coverage. So rather unfortunate that last time there were at least some mentions of what was the proceedings of the hearings. This one is radio silence, so I don't think that makes for a very well-informed public. So there you go. Well, listen, thank you again for a really awesome episode of the week that was. Thank you, Huel Perkins, for joining us.
Thanks for allowing me to play.
Yes,
Huel, I'm looking forward to the next time you're on. I expect to hear an F-bomb from you.
and not Fox. Thank you, Barb Ingalls. Thank you, Bill Seikaly. Thank you, Nancy Derringer. Thank you, Joel Sklar. Thank you, Steve Fishman, who left before being thanked. And thank you, and with the last word, as always, Allan.
Drive home safely.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.